Cool. So for those of you who didn't just catch the last part, I just talked more on performance, workloads, price performance, problems with the card, how they're all going to stack up on these sections here. Like the best card as far as workload, performance-wise, all of these from highest to low tier, price, performance, and quality, and then the worst cards at launch. I will actually say, for everyone who watched this one, or maybe you don't care, but I'll say real quickly, I think that if there are driver issues with like really big driver issues with any of these cards, or there is no ray tracing, that whatever it doesn't have a really significant price difference between what it's supposed to match. So whatever they have to match a 3070, whatever they have to match a 3080 and the 3090, or compete with them. If those cards don't have a large financial difference, then you can say maybe one or two of them could be down here, the worst cards, if they have problems like that. So I'm gonna leave this card in the 4K in the best one for NVIDIA. I'm gonna take this out. I'm gonna take the A6000 out. Yeah, I'm gonna take it out. We're not gonna talk about them. Same with biggest Navi. I'm gonna leave them up there. I'm gonna assume that 6900 XT is not the biggest Navi. Now let's go with the 3070, 3080, and 3090. Yay, there we go. That was easy. No, honestly, it's kind of like, I know that this isn't a 1080p card, but really a 2080 Ti level of performance to ray tracing for like the next year, it's going to be like 1080 Ti. I mean, it's going to be like 1080p for, it's going to be like a 1080 Ti. It's going to be like, it's going to be 1080p, especially for like ray tracing, high frame rates. You want to play at ultra and high settings. There. It'll be low 1440p for non-ray tracing stuff, which I guess, you know what, let me pause that. Yay, there we go. So for 1080p ray tracing, I think this is going to fit here really nice. I mean, I can make a list that goes on to like 15, 17 different subsections. So we can do ray tracing and high frame rates, ray trace 60 FPS. Most people only care about getting at least 60 FPS to going up to possibly 120. So if we're talking about 1080, we're talking about 60 frames, not the highest settings, then you can go 1440p, and then these will be, more 4K cards. If we're talking about like realistically going forward for the next year, I'd say we're probably talking more like this. Which this really isn't much of a difference. This could also be fit like towards the lower end here. Yada yada. So if we're talking just ray tracing, we're going to put, let's say AMD has 4 graphics cards. Just ray tracing. And then I'm going to put this ahead of the 3070, this 6800 XT. Again, we don't know. We have no idea what its ray tracing is like. Absolutely none. Anybody that tells you they know what it is, they've got either insider information, which lucky son of a bitch for them that almost nobody else has, or they're talking out their fucking ass. We have no idea. To think that a 6900 XT will beat the 3090 in 4K ray tracing, I don't want to say so. I don't think there's gonna I don't even think in regular 4K. I think this is kind of gonna be up in the air. Now this is not price to performance down here. This is just performance in gaming. If we're doing price to performance, I already did that in the last video. Price to performance, this is a lot closer. I mean, this isn't even comparable. The 3090 is a low tier card without any of this. The 3090 is a low tier card. The 3080 is really more right here. I know people are going to be like, what? I know this is a hot take. Like, sure. 60 frames, fucking with the settings? Sure, here. Is this going to be doing like 60 frames, ultra settings, everything on Cyberpunk 2077? Sure. Will it do this for whatever comes out like Q2, Q3 next year? Is this going to be good going forward for 2 years? Again, I'm not talking about the total power consumption. I'm not talking about price or performance. I'm not talking about availability. I'm not talking about any of that shit. We're talking about just frame rates. It's going to be somewhere like here. It's going to be low 4K as far as ray trace. That's why if they're all here, that this is the order with I should just have a second 3080 picture to have it down here. Now, if there's a 6900 XT, I think it's going to beat this in everything besides maybe 4K ray tracing. Whatever their biggest card is going to beat the 3080 with everything besides 4K ray tracing. We don't know. Again, I have no idea on the ray tracing to go off of. Non-ray tracing, I think the cards are more like this. And when we get to a lower frame, like if we're going to put like, how is the 3080, like how does this do as a 1080p card? Like the 3080 is going to be really bad. I think every single one of these is going to be better. And this will be better than buying a 3080 for 1080p. Ray tracing or not. Until we get to 1440p, like maybe these are the only like, maybe these are the only like 1440p like good ray tracing ones. Maybe you can put that there then with it. Again, because we don't know what the ray tracing is like on the AMD cards, so these ray tracing columns are a little harder to, or rows are a little harder to do. On 1440p, I don't see how this is not reality. This might be a reality. I don't think so. I think it's going to be like this. I think the 6800 is going to, I don't think there's going to be a lot that's not going to be better than the 3080 for 1440p. Just non-ray tracing, just 1440p. Which is mostly what I aim for. Aim for 1440p, at least 60. Something around like 90 is great. And so I want to screw with the settings. I can get really high or I can get really low if I just want it to look nice. But these don't scale well. This ampere on lower lower graphical settings. So yeah, this is essentially where I think it's going to stay. I think this 3090 is going to probably be the 4K ray tracing king. I don't think it's going to be the 4K king. It's not, actually. The 3080 is better for it than 4K in non-ray tracing. Even with ray tracing, actually, if we're being real, like this will be the strongest, but this will be the best in NVIDIA stack. Because it's like a $700 to $1,500 price increase for what? Like get an $800 3080. Like what's that $700 going to do for you? 10%? It's not worth it. And if you need this for the VRAM, like that's what I went to these ones before. Like the 3090 is really in a low tier one. It's not needed, especially when this comes out. And I can't put this in mid tier because we have no idea what the final specs for VRAM for AMD are. So it has to be low tier there. But as far as gaming, like it's gonna be the king probably, but it's not gonna be worth it. Just the best is not always worth it. Like the iPhone 12 Pro at whatever its full capacity is gonna be incredible. It's going to be their most powerful iPhone. Is it their best deal? An iPhone SE is pretty much worth it. A 128 gigabyte iPhone 12. It's like, sorry, at 700 compared to like a $1,200 iPhone. What's the difference? A better camera. What are you going to use the camera for? It's like, what are you using this stuff for? Like here, what are you going to use that 24? Do you need that 24 gigabytes? Are you buying this for gaming? Then this thing should not even be on here. This thing should just be up here and be off of the frame rate list. Really should. It has no business anywhere with gaming. No business. A 3080, I mean, yeah, it's kind of the standard. A 3070 is going to be NVIDIA's best guy, and it's gonna be like, it's gonna be this low tier for the 1440p stuff, but it's gonna be good for this. Right? I don't think they should actually, and this is, we're gonna have a quick discussion, I guess, of what I think they should come out with or not. I actually don't think there should be a 3060. Because this is where I think that the 3070 is sitting. Now, real quickly. Cool. So I'm going to, I'm going to show what I'm talking about. Because everybody has this like misconception about the 2080 Ti. Like, and they address this in talking about here. The only parts where they bottlenecked would be Final Fantasy 15, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, because of CPU demanding games. Right. So let's give this a slight boost, kind of like 85 maybe. These are, well, they don't say. If this is with ray tracing or not. With the ones that I think Shadow of the Tomb Raider has ray tracing. They don't say what has ray tracing or not. I think this is just max settings 2K, which is what it looks like. Like, these are 1440p from a 2080 Ti. The 3070 is supposed to be a 2080 Ti. It's going to be within margin, 5% slower, 5-10% slower or faster. So add 10% onto this, like Crysis 3, getting like 100 frames on 2K max settings. So to say that this 3070 is anywhere ray tracing wise, like really good for anything but 1080p, like to say it's going to be good for 1440p ray tracing, you're out of your fucking minds. Out of your fucking minds. You know, if you're playing Fortnite and then you turn on ray tracing, that shit goes down from like 120 frames to like 45, 49. It's insane. So there's no way that a 3070 that's supposed to be 25% slower maybe than a 3080, there's no way it's going to be doing 1440p ray tracing on something like Fortnite, let alone like Death Stranding, Control, let alone anything that's, you know, decent. I don't want to talk shit about Fortnite, but I will. You know, anything that's decent. But like that's a good comparison. And we can't know all of this because the 3070 is not out. It's in people's hands, but the embargo's still up. You know, we don't have it, but we know that the 3080 is a good 1440p ray tracing. If it's 4K ray tracing, it's gonna be lower settings to have that 60 plus frame rate. Even that 60 frame rate for something like Fortnite, like maybe it was 4K Fortnite was 120 frames and then it went down to 40 something. I might be wrong in that. I might be getting the wrong one. It might be 4K instead of 1440p. But if we take that, it's like 30 to 50 frames. I mean, sorry, 40 to 50 frames at like 4K. Like, what is 1440p going to be then? Like 60 plus? That's why this is here. This could be here. This could be in the ray tracing here. But I don't know if this is going to, like, I think the only thing that this beats in ray tracing, the 3070, is going to be whatever this 5700 XT is. Or 5700, whatever this is. Whatever its competitor is. That's all that it's going to beat. And I think it's only going to beat it in ray tracing. This is not even going to be a contest right here. Like I should add 2 other graphics cards here just to have a buffer in between them so that the 3070 and this are going to be next to each other. They're going to scale a lot better. So ultimately, here's our 4K ray tracing. Here's our 1440p ray tracing. Here's our 1080p ray tracing. This one's going to be here. This one's probably going to be here. And these are going to be somewhere here. As far as 4K, you know, once we take ray tracing off, I don't think there's going to be really a competition between the cards. Besides this lower tier here, which if the scaling is good for RDNA 2 on lower graphical settings, well, you know, Ampere doesn't scale well. We know that from the 3080 and the 3090. So we're expecting a lower TDP with the 3070 because that's the specs. It's a lower TDP. I'm not expecting the 3070 to scale better on lower resolutions. I'm not expecting that at all because it's the architecture. It's not like the specific card. It's the architecture of Ampere. It just doesn't scale well. It's for data centers and AI. So I've been told, because I don't know any shit on my own, you know, have that out there in case you're here. You know, well, how does he know so much? I watch YouTubers that are decent at what they do, or good at what they do. I also watch the ones that suck at what they do too. So yeah, I don't think this whole frame rate stuff is so convoluted with all this. This was a much easier tier list because it's just we already know a lot of the bad stuff that's about Ampere. We can speculate if the drivers aren't good for RDNA 2, but there's no way in hell that I would probably recommend anything but a 3070 for gaming. If you'd be getting a 3080 for gaming, there'd be asterisks there. Like if you need to get a new power supply, is it really more valuable that the card you're buying that has less VRAM than the competitor also has less TDP so you don't have to buy a new power supply? I mean, does that not matter? Is the fact that the ray tracing is so much worse, is that really gonna mean you're gonna buy a new power supply? You don't think it means a lot, and it really, to a lot of people, everyone's been saying, "Oh, don't worry about it. Your power supply is going to be fine." Like you have no idea. Like everybody who's telling you have no problem with your power supply has no idea what the fuck they're talking about because your power supply is your power supply. Unless you've told them what's in your power supply, no way. Absolutely no way. Which actually they can give you a decent, you know, saying, hey, if you have a 650 watt 80 plus gold, you know, and then these are your specs or somewhere around here, like you should be good. You know, they could tell you that because these things are going to have to be underclocked because they'll fucking probably have being pushed to the limits. I don't, you know, but nobody can tell you like your card's not, you know, your power supply is fine. No, you have to do a power supply calculator. If you're already running close and you're having a graphics card that's now taking over 100 more watts, that kind of fucking matters. Especially right now, power supplies are really expensive and hard to find. Well, if you got to get rid of your old power supply, which might sell for like 50, 60 bucks, and you're buying a newer power supply around 130, 120, that's $60 extra plus taxes and a new power supply and changing it out of your system. Like, that's a $75 fucking tax right there. $60, $75 tax. For a card that is going to consume more power and is going to be probably more expensive. This means so much. This means so much with AMD. The ball is completely in their court. I've been saying this since the fucking RTX 3000 launch. Since that reveal, I've been saying that the ball is in AMD's court. They've essentially just handed AMD the ball. Same thing with Xbox, did the same thing with Sony. As soon as they said, hey, Game Pass is going to be on PC, they basically went Sony, you know. Once it got leaked that they're having a proprietary storage option, Sony, here's the ball. Do what you want. You know, if you miss, then we get to make another shot. But if you just keep scoring and finessing on us while we keep dropping the fucking ball, well, the score's not even going to be close. And this don't look good for Jensen in video. I'm going to say. All right? This don't look good for them. This really, really, really don't look good for them. Especially if the ray tracing is really like comparable. If it's like, oh, you're getting 10 less frames for ray trace. Oh, what? Ultra settings? Okay. Lower it. Okay. All right, then I guess I'm going to go up and get the more expensive card than the 3070 for ray tracing, but it's also going to be a significantly better card than the 3070 anyway. You know, it's going to be the 3080 competitor for kind of, you know, and all this. If AMD comes out with whatever their 3080 competitor is at $600, and then the 3070 competitor is $400, and they are actual competitors in everything, but the RT Studio and all the extras that come with it, and ray tracing. If they don't need DLSS, if it's just like, yeah, in the games that DLSS is there, NVIDIA cards would be better because they can turn it on. But if you don't, it's better anyway, or it's comparable. If it's already there anyway, if the only three things are the RT Studio, ray tracing, and not ray tracing yes or no, but ray tracing like a matter of like 5 to 10 frames, and DLSS, if those are the three fucking things that are there for a significant price drop, less TDP, 3080 is looking pretty fucking dead. The 3090 is kind of fucking dead. 3090 is kind of fucking dead. The only people are going to be buying here are plebs. Plebs and normies. Only people are going to be buying it. Because this card here, this A6000, like, makes no reason to have this. And if you're using, like, say that, oh, maybe that card's going to be like $3,000. It's like, yeah, but the $1,500 price point already wasn't like a selling, like, if you're buying a $1,500 graphics card, it's because you need the best performance of a $1,500 graphics card. If you're buying it because you want to have the best, good for you. It was an unnecessary purchase. But if you really need the 3070, I mean, if you really need the highest amount of VRAM, if you really needed the 3090 for like work, like, then who gives a fuck if this is $3,000, you know? So that's it, guys. Have a nice one. You know, don't buy in their bullshit. And I'll see you guys on Wednesday or Thursday.